Hello, my name is Tom Cahill. The date is the 17th of October 2013. ALPonz is the subject of this video, or the Aston Lloyd Ponzi scheme. Now, Aston Lloyd, the holding company, still trades as a result of a despicable showing from the authorities, especially the City of London Police, in allowing it to, despite it being unequivocally proven to be a fraud from in October 2010 by me with documentary evidence. Absolutely no question about it. I quite happily hang my hat on, any point of reputation on this. There's no question of it. It's a fraud. I had all the evidence. The evidence was there. They've allowed me to continue to trade. They've even outright refused to my face to go down there and ask people questions, because some of them, surprise, surprise, used to work for them right now. Anyway, the bentness is quite incredible around this Ponzi scheme for people who aren't acquainted with how these things work, but it's by no means the only one in the country, and they all follow a certain pattern, which is police complicity, professional services. They use different professional services and they blame them for each of the accidents that happen. All of the accidents seem to go in a certain direction and benefit the criminals. So obviously they're not all accidents, because it's like 50 events happen like a toss of a coin and you've got heads every time. The chance of that happening is 1 in like a billion or 1 in a trillion or something. Or probably even more than that actually, if it's 50 times. Yet people are imbeciles and they think that you can have lots of coincidences. They're coincidence theorists, but they're not really true coincidence theorists, because they think you can have multiple coincidences going the same way, and that there's not something fucking bent going on. You've got to remember that in a civil capacity, balance of probability is the standard of evidence. In a criminal capacity, it's beyond reasonable doubt. Now, if something happens and it's like 1 in a trillion, then that is beyond reasonable doubt, isn't it? So hopefully it will become clear to you that none of this is well, some of it's probably coincidences, but when you add it all up, it can't all be coincidences. Right now, one of the things that, aside from that cropped up with this, is as well as using bent professionals like bent accountants, KBSP partnership based in Finchley Road in London, who signed off for 2009 accounts I know that were fraudulent. They had figures didn't add up on them. They're quite happy to sign their names to them, even if you look at them, they don't make any sense. Full audit. They put their neck on the line for every single entry that went in to make that audit, but they're quite happy to sign them off fraudulently. Complete criminals. Again, police don't want to go around there because they work in an office. That's a Tony Dobinson classic. He comes out with more stupid things than that. Detective Tony Dobinson for absolutely ridiculous bent things. I've never come across a more bent policeman until I met Andrew Fisher of the Met, but he's a complete retard, so he doesn't even know what he's talking about. But Tony Dobinson's not a complete idiot, not very bright, not very clever, about average, keeps coming out with completely bent things, and every time you say that doesn't make any sense, he says, people much more important than me, you, Tom, will decide. It's like, who's that? Thing or something high command? No. Well, who is it then, Tony? Who's more important than me? I think I pay your wages, don't I? I thought you were meant to be working. You get the picture. Right, the point is, as you go forward, you've got different parties responsible for this, and I want to touch on each of the different types of parties, because a lot of people don't think that these parties are involved. They just think they're incidental. Again, coincidence theorists right now, you've got to get your head around it. If coincidences all go in the same way, right, they are not coincidences. They're happening that way because somebody's making them happen that way. Right, so you've got the initial company, right, which might be split into different limited companies and a holding company on top, right? That's Aston Lloyd, right? Now they're trading as the same company, even though on paper they're different companies, but they're switching the money around. So, like I've made it clear in another video, you've got what's called the veil of incorporation. In this instance, you can lift the veil of incorporation because they're not really separate companies. They're just using it as a money laundering conduit, yeah? And it's a firewall, but it's not got any legitimate firewall. It's not like they've got a car business and a business that sells boats and a business that makes cardboard boxes, and they're all separate. They're taking money you paid for a car and spending it on cardboard boxes, then spending it, putting it into their own bank account, and because you spent it on a car, they go, no, it went to the cardboard box business, the cardboard box business. No, you fucking work for both businesses. You were sitting in the same office, answering the same phone, using the same email with the same email chaser, and you think that, and also, on the email chasers, which is a good case in point, it made very clear that all international transactions went through ALPonz, which was Aston Lloyd and Partners International, which was the part that dealt with mainly overseas property. And it says all international transfers of Aston Lloyd and Holdings plc go through this company. Now, when I gave this bit of information to the police, they became extreme. Well, I didn't give it to them. That's a bit misleading. You give them something, they will just fucking lose it or put it in a filing cabinet, or I don't know what they do with it, but it won't get you anywhere. What you've got to do is you've got to go down there don't go and try and hand it in to the fraud squad, because they'll just make all sorts of excuses. They know you've got evidence. They'll they'll probably set the fire alarm off and set the place on fire rather than take any evidence. What you've got to do, you've got to go to Bishopsgate Police Station, and you've got civilian workers there, especially out of hours, on the front desk. Take 2 copies of everything, right, and get them to stamp every single page of what you hand in, right? That's what you've got to do. Then go and scan that with the received stamp, and email loads of them, and email other people to show that they've got it. Because otherwise they'll just say they didn't get it. It doesn't matter if it's recorded delivery, special delivery, they will say they didn't get it. This is what the police do. This is what you're paying the taxpayers' money for them to fuck you over. That's what they do in there. And the other thing that they come out of is another classic, I forget which one. I've never met him, but he's quite young. He replaced Tony Dobinson, but not straight away. There's been another one in between. They keep passing the evidence around between different departments for plausible deniability reasons, quite clearly. But the point is, this one guy was saying, you can't just say it's evidence, unequivocal evidence, because it's documentary. He says it depends where the evidence came from. We could be biased. I said, well, hang on a minute. If I've come across evidence that's unequivocal evidence of fraud, because people are making fraudulent representations, are you saying that I'm making up false evidence? He goes, I'm not saying that. It's just that it might be seen as biased. And I go, that's a load of shit. And he goes, no, it's not shit. And I said, listen, what are you talking about? You're just talking rubbish. Do you think I'm an idiot? And he thought, these people, you cannot trust anything that they do. They're totally bent. Now, if the Ian Puddick case has not taught you, if you've not looked into it, you need to look into it. Operation Bohan, they were told by someone at Kroll, which is a private security firm that lots of them go and work for when they leave the City of London Police. What they do is, this guy who is a reinsurance broker, that's a very sort of top-up financial job. He's one of the highest earners in the country, earns $7 million a year. And because this Ian Puddick wasn't happy with him about something, because he'd done something bad, and then when this thing was remediated in part by the guy's boss, the guy didn't like what happened. And I won't go into the personal details of it, because Ian doesn't really seem to think they're relevant, because he's upset with police corruption, not the fact that he was dealing with this extremely shady, unpleasant character. That's by the wayside, which I think in a lot of ways has got a good point. You know, don't let's muddy the water with the fact that there's another miscreant involved, which there undoubtedly has been. But the fact is that he reported to the police in one of the home county constabularies that this guy put things up on the internet about him or something like that. People in the home county police constabulary said this is definitely not a police matter. It may be harassment if what you're saying he said about you isn't true, but it's definitely not a police matter. So, don't bother us with it. Again, he's got a letter to the effect of this. So what he did, he went to speak to Kroll, and the next thing, Kroll was speaking to the top people in the City of London Police, and they spent the next 2 or 3 years burgling his house, bugging him, arresting him with the armed police, terrorism branch, trying to say he was a terrorist and then also a drug dealer. But it just sort of went all over the place. We're trying to threaten him, intimidating people he worked with, bad-mouthing him, defaming him, loads of criminal behaviour. And then in the last part of the court case, they were constantly perjuring themselves, by the way, to all the court cases. And in the last court case, one of the leading officers, I believe his second name is Ellis, somebody Ellis, I might be wrong, but I think it's Ellis. I've got all their names, but they're on a piece of paper, and I've been away, so they're in boxes, so I can't get to it that easily. This particular completely bent copper from the City of London Police. Again, they're not really coppers; they're just white collar criminals, and they get another white collar criminal job as soon as they leave. So they're not proper coppers. So you can't really compare them to, you get some bad apples, some good police. None of these are good. They're all scum. Right? What happened was he went on the last sort of like the last hearing. He just all of a sudden, despite all the notes that you're meant to take if you're a copper and all this stuff, and what he'd said in all his statements, his witness statements, he just in the doc just changed his story. So he wasn't on trial. Ian was on trial, And all of a sudden, he started saying that, he started to, oh yeah, I forgot. The last time we raided him a few years ago, he had loads of cocaine in his house. Oh, there's a big block of it. Yeah, I remember, I just forgot. Right, the judge didn't immediately sort of do him for contempt of court or perjury and just send him down to the dock for his horrendous lying. He allowed him to continue. Then he said, oh yeah, he also had lots of other stuff in his house that shows that he's a big criminal. Now this guy's actually just a plumber. Now he's a successful plumber, so he's got a bit of money, but he's got a nice big house in Barnet. But the point is, he's not an international drug dealer. There's no evidence for it, nor is he a terrorist. But you don't get terrorists in England, apart from people who are paid by the government, as we well know. But anyway, he definitely had none of the apparent hallmarks of being a hairy terrorist. Like, he didn't have a little hook. He wasn't from Israel, and he wasn't on the MI5 payroll. So what's the chance of him being a terrorist? Zero, anyway. But the point is, this policeman said, yeah, he's got he had this painting on his wall, and I think it was a Damien Hirst painting. Now, when the police illegitimately but officially raided his house for no good reason in the first instance, at massive expense to the taxpayer. Operation Bohang cost more than £1.6 million that they all admit to, but their excuse for not explaining the rest of the money they were wasting on this, or maliciously fucking misappropriating, it's definitely malfeasance in public office, and no question of it, at the very minimum, is when they, officially but, completely illegally, criminally were bullying him, and they went and raided his house for no good reason in the past. What they did, they went round there and they just basically, scared the shit out of everybody. Went down to his financial advisor, did the same. Armed police, trying to scare everybody. Went down to his business, did the same. His accountants did the same. Just to put people off having anything to do with him. It's complete and utter abuse of power of the most worst kind. The next thing they did, right? They left the house, couldn't fit anything on him, left. So this copper in the court case comes out and tells everybody that this Ian had this picture on the wall, and it was a Damien Hirst picture. Now, obviously, it's a little bit embarrassing probably for him, because he shouldn't. What on earth is he doing having Damien Hirst pictures, because they're not it's not really art. It's a bit of an embarrassment, but maybe he bought it as an investment. He should have kept it in the loft though. But that aside, right? This copper says, oh yeah, because it's a Damien Hirst painting. Now, as it turns out, since this illegal criminal raid on his house, right, there'd been other illegal criminal raids on his house, like, for instance, he'd been burgled by professional burglars. They picked the lock, got in, and stolen all his court papers and things like took the computer, be diddling around his computer, stuff like that. And also they put bugs in his house. He found bugs in his house underneath furniture and stuff, right? So this had been happening, but of course the police were obviously involved with it, or Kroll were involved with it, because it's a swinging door. It's all part of the same thing. And basically, this copper goes, he had a Damien Hirst painting, but he never had it when this guy had the illegitimate yet official raid. So this guy's gone around there afterwards, burgled his house, seen the painting, got the fact that he didn't see it the last time mixed up, and he's gone and basically admitted to burgling the guy's house. Yet the judge didn't do anything about it. And this is the level of criminality you're dealing with. So whenever you're doing anything, when you're looking at this Aston Lloyd Ponzi scheme, be very aware the police have been deliberately not investigating it. Yeah. Now the policeman who's currently, I believe, dealing with it, and he said he's going to be dealing with it to the end, is called Paul Kirk. Now Paul Kirk is retiring soon. Now this is very important, Paul, because as we know, police don't like to retire with dishonesty on their records, do they? And the fact that you told certain people that you were going to seize all the evidence, since I went to the winding up petition and I reported the fact that it was a fraud, and it's actually put on the winding up order that I am an equitable interest holder, not I allege that I'm an equitable interest holder. That's what the registrar, she's a judge, but acting as a registrar, said. But I'm all those barristers in the big fancy court building called the Rolls Building in the High Court. Apparently, you said that you were going to go get a van and pick up all of RE's 10 stuff that they had in this secluded house that we expected probably would be burnt down. It was apparently Nimish's house. And you retained it as evidence. But the thing is, you haven't then got back to anyone and let them know this. So I think you need to put it on the record that you've got this evidence, and if you don't guarantee that you've got it and you're going to keep it for a set time, and you need to be in writing, what I'm going to do next time I get the chance, I'm going to get a court order put on you, and I'm going to make sure that that evidence is retained. And if you don't retain it, well, there's going to be problems. If you don't guarantee you're going to retain it, I'm going to get a court order to make sure you do, along with KBSP's records, because they're going to be trying to dump them soon, because the 6-year time limit will be up. And even though there's no time you can claim back for in a criminal capacity, the 6 years on the accounts they've done, so 2009, so 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015. 2015 is not that far away, and also I'm not really sure. I mean, if they publish those accounts, there'll be from data before that, so they'll be accidentally on purpose fucking throwing it out. I'm sure they will be. And the thing that we've got on the Aston Lloyd Ponzi scheme, as you very, very, very well know in the City of London Police, is there are no invoices for any project management or anything like that. The invoices, or the lack of the invoices, is a major thing. If they just say, oh, that's the total of the invoices, yeah, that's a major weakness in the case. If they just haven't got any invoices, it proves that it's fraud, because they never even had any invoices, never paid any builders' invoices, never had any look into any of that. So the whole thing will obviously be a fraud. But as we well know, you want to try and pretend that that stuff doesn't exist, because it just ran out of time and it's all a big accident. Accident theorist. I'm not an accident theorist. Right, now, there's another little aspect that I haven't touched upon before, which is the use of celebrities. After the event, this is after I've paid money in, but the use of celebrities and various sponsorship deals to forward the aims of the Ponzi scheme. Now, Joe Upchurch is involved with this, and he went to meet Joe Calzaghe, the undefeated world, I think it's super middleweight boxing champion, isn't it? And he basically inveigled him into the fraud. Now, a lot of you might think that he's an unwitting dupe in this. Right now, I don't really know. I don't think Joe Calzaghe is very bright, but he is definitely a criminal, and he comes from a criminal family. I've got it on very good authority that Joe Calzaghe's dad and he were basically being prompted. I think it was his dad. They were going to name a road after them somewhere near where they live in Wales. Now, this guy told me he's Welsh. He explained this to me. He said, look, they're going to name this road after him, and there was a lot of public support for it, but not people who live, people around there. A lot of them, there was not a lot of people wanted it, but this wasn't like the majority. But there was a lot of people who'd say, yeah, good idea. Call this new road Calzaghe this or that. And the council got back and they said, well, generally we never call a road after somebody when they're still alive, but we're definitely not going to call it after them because their family's got a bad reputation. Because the point is, Enzo Calzaghe, his dad, is a famous drug dealer in the area. So the Calzaghe family's been famous for a long time, not because of Joe being because they're a criminal family, and Joe Calzaghe's dad is a drug dealer. And he's a big drug dealer, and he's like an infamous drug dealer. So you see, this is the thing. Joe Calzaghe is from a criminal family. He's very dishonest. Another thing Joe Calzaghe's done is he's fronted another similar Ponzi scheme, right? That Sir Geoff Hurst, Sir Geoff Hurst, the footballer, he used to play for England. He was stung by it. Now, I've got court documents from that particular case, and Joe Calzaghe fronted that Ponzi scheme. Same kind of deal. He would get one of the units if he lied and in fraud made fraudulent representations to the fact that he had invested in it. So if he said he'd invested in it, he would get one. So he hadn't invested anything and then he'd get paid for it. He was just saying, I've invested, but he hadn't invested. So that's lying. Now you might say, well, what's the difference? Well, there's a lot of difference, because if I say I've invested in something, that means I've put my money down on something. People say, oh no, but he would charge that amount of money just for doing a bit of publicity. No, that's not the same. It might equate to the same amount in the end, but the truth is he has not invested in it. And also, on some of the videos that have been taken down from the internet, definitely Joe Calzaghe was on the videos where they were talking about making hotels near Tuzla Lake, in the Tuzla Lake resort, and he was investing in that. Now, another boxer is involved called Carl Froch. Carl Froch's an up-and-coming boxer, and he's not retired, and I don't believe he's a criminal, and he's not like a sort of like big-headed twat like what Joe Calzaghe looks like. He's always like he's overly full of himself. You look at pictures and you can just tell he's a wanker without even. He just looks like a wanker to me anyway. Point is, Carl Froch, I think he's a lot more humble, a lot nicer, and I think he's a little bit naive. I think he gets on quite well with Joe Calzaghe, and I think Joe Calzaghe might talk him into getting involved with this Ponzi scheme. But basically, with him, Like, I know, for instance, after someone's fight, they've said to him, like, what are you going to do now? And he says, oh, I'm just going to go fit the floor in my house. I'm going to, like, put down some laminate floor or some oak floor or whatever. You know, like, he's a lot more sort of down to earth, a lot more normal. He doesn't go around hanging around with, like, that paedophile fucking facilitator, Peter Stringfellow's show. Peter Stringfellow hang around with a load of D-list Hollywood actors whose faces are all falling apart from plastic surgery. You know, that's not Cole Flock at all. Now, I know somebody who's been speaking to Cole Flock about this, and poor Cole Flock, right, I feel quite sorry for him, because he actually, when he was in one of his quite big fights, I don't know what, a world title or something, it was a big fight, and the back part, like on the top part of your bum, where just below your waistline, there's a sort of like plate there for advertising, and obviously in boxing, because you see their back, obviously the front like that, you see their back, or the sides, that's the big advertising spot on a big fight, and that cost £60,000. That's £60,000 worth of advertising. Like on a Formula One car, you've got like specific advertising slots, and they cost a certain amount of money. And what he was fooled into doing is for a house in Tuzla Lake, or an apartment like the one I've got, which is a 2-bedroom apartment with a, you know, like 60 square meter apartment. For that same deal, which I only was meant to pay $52,000 for, he basically said, "All right, well, I'll endorse your product if you give me one of those flats." So he got sold short anyway, because the apartments weren't being sold for that amount. I actually think they're worth more than that, but they had no intention of selling them to you, so therefore they lowered the price, so they look like a better deal. But the point is that poor old Cole Flock, I don't know how to say his name, but he's not, you know, like, I don't know that much about boxing. But the point is, this poor guy has basically said, so he's basically accidentally been tricked into committing fraud by saying, yeah, I've invested in it, I believe in it, blah, 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 blah. Then he's not got 60 grand, he's got a house which isn't his, which he's never going to get. Right. So, Joe Calzaghe is a scumbag. He's a serial Ponzi scheme facilitator and promoter. You know, he is a criminal, and he comes from, I've had it on very good authority. I could be wrong, but I'd sort of roll with the punches. I reckon he's definitely, I don't know. Why am I, pardon the pun, I reckon he's from a criminal family, and I know for a full fact, if you've accidentally fronted Ponzi schemes before and it's all gone to court, and you just go and do more and more of them, like, it's not an accident. So there's a pattern. This is a course, This is a course of conduct. He periodically, he quite obviously, constantly says he's bought things that he hasn't for publicity reasons, and then, you know, he just fronts it for criminals. He doesn't give a fuck. But anyway, and this is where you get another thing which comes out of that. It's very interesting. Nigel Tarrant of Colemans-ctts, they're the bench solicitors who acted as the conveyancers, right? And I use that word in inverted commas, it's the conveyancers of the properties in Turkey, but they will say they didn't do any conveyancing, because they're saying they conveyed it from one part of Aston Lloyd to the other, but the people who were meant to be buying it, they tricked into thinking they're working for them, were paying for the conveyancing of a Aston Lloyd to Aston Lloyd conveyance. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But anyway, bear with me. They took down a load of pictures from the internet, as they did with all these videos about people advertising Aston Lloyd stuff, yeah? Now, so they took this stuff off the internet, but the thing is, as you may well know, I know there's something called the Wayback Machine, there's various other things. What basically happened is, somebody I know has looked on the internet, and they've got a picture of Joe Calzaghe sitting in the background, like this, standing in the background, and you've got Nigel Tarrant, who works for Colemans-ctts, he heads up the Kingston office, and he's currently managing the Carbon X fraud. He's down there like that, smiling, and then, Tarrant's at the back, and then the two Joes are there like this, with fists, yeah, like that, like fists, both of them with fists, smiling. Joe Calzaghe's got a bit of a sarcastic smile, but he does often look like he's a bit sarcastic, doesn't he? Bit of an irritating looking character. And basically they took that off the internet. Now, here's the question, and this question goes to Joe Calzaghe as well. Right, you've got a contract on the table in front of them. They're standing there with fists. Nigel Tarrant's got his arms around them like that. So, who was Nigel Tarrant acting for in that picture? Was he acting for Joe Calzaghe? Or wasn't he acting for Joe Calzaghe? It's interesting, isn't it? Who was he acting for? Who was he acting for? Aston Lloyd? I'll leave that one for you to think about. Why did they take it down from the internet?